Welcome to the West Ham Weekly, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. I'm so sorry it's not live. I'm still in Cyprus, but I thought I'd do something for you because it's been a while since I was online, and I thought I'd do a quick show just to sort of update you, the usual updates on the West Ham Weekly. The only thing that's missing is the interaction with you guys, so I apologise for that. But I will be back to doing live shows when I'm back from my holiday. I'm still getting my suntan up to on point. So do forgive me for not being interactive, but I hope you enjoy the show anyway. The usual stuff will apply. I'm going to look through the last week or so of what West Ham United, all the latest news on the games that we played, and Electon Southampton. Of course, a brief update on the women and academy teams, and all the player updates like injury news, loan news, and so on. So let's get cracking with the first part of the show. So, after an international break, the women's team were back in Premier League action at the weekend. West Ham played their fourth game of the season and they got their second win of of the season as well against Aston Villa in a game that ended 2-1. Goal scorers Dagny. I'm never going to be able to pronounce her surname, so Dagny will do. Goal scorer Dagny scored her first goal after just 2 minutes, and then Honoka Hayashi scored after 14 minutes. Villa pulled a goal back in the second half, but the game was more noted for what happened at the end of the game than anything else. Despite us winning 2-0, there was an altercation which saw Hawa Sissoko seeing red, where it looked like she threw a punch at a Villa player. There was an altercation. It looked like the Villa player raised her hands as well, but it was Sissoko who got sent off and now could face a lengthy ban. It's going to be interesting to see what the post-match report or the refs report comes up with that. For the under 21s, they had an interesting week. They played 3 games in 8 days, starting on the 8th of October in Premier League 2, where they narrowly lost to Chelsea in a 1-0 home defeat. And then on the 11th, they had a baptism of fire in an international friendly competition. They played in the Premier League International Cup, where they were thumped 5-0 by PSV Eindhoven. Um, Not a great result. They haven't done very well in this competition. It was their second game and second defeat in it. But to get thumped 5-0 at home was, I guess, quite humbling. But they finished the week on a high in the Premier League 2, back in action in Premier League 2, where they drew away to Blackburn, where they fought from 2-0 down to grab 2 late goals to finish the game 2-2. Northern Ireland youngster Callum Marshall continues to with his amazing goal tally this season. After being promoted from the under-18 squad, he's now in action for the under-21s, and he got his first goal on the 83rd minute for them against Blackburn at the weekend. That's 7 goals in nine appearances already this season for him. Of course, the other 6 of which were for the under-18s. Also, promising youngster Regan Clayton. We've mentioned him before. He got promoted from the under-18s as well, and he got his first goal of the season to make the game 2-2. Now, that's the under-21's only second point of the season so far in 9 Premier League games, Premier League 2 games. So unfortunately, they still sit bottom of that league. But they showed some signs. They really fought hard against Blackburn, and to grab 2 late goals and get back into that game was pretty good to see. The under-18s, their last game of the season was a surprising 3-0 away loss to Nottingham Forest, but not in the league. That was in the Premier League Cup. Let's not get confused. Everything is called Premier League. Premier League International Cup, Premier League Cup, etc. This is a domestic competition of which the under-18s are in. They lost 3-0 to Nottingham Forest on the 8th of October. They won't be back in action until the 22nd of October when they face Chelsea back in the under-18s Premier League. They're still top of their league, 3 points clear of Crystal Palace. Right, what about some player news? So, of the 5 centre backs that we have at the club, there's only one that's fit, Tilo Kehrer, who himself returned to team action after he missed the Anderlecht game last Thursday because of a knock. Craig Dawson, of course, he was in the game against Anderlecht after he came on for Angelo Ogbonna, who picked up a hamstring injury. But we saw Dawson as well go off with what was reported to be a dead leg. Now, we don't know whether Dawson is going to be available for Liverpool. It's speculation that he could be made available. A dead leg, quite surprised that he actually didn't make the Southampton game at the weekend. So one would have thought that he would have been okay by now. So it's about 50-50 whether he's going to be made available for the game against Liverpool this coming Wednesday evening. Um, Kurt Zuma, of course, is out as well. He's had an illness, a similar illness to Antonio, which kept him out of training for the whole week, as well as Zuma as well. He had a similar bug, and apparently it sort of spread amongst some of the other players as well at West Ham United. But it was Zuma and Antonio who had the worst of it. We saw Antonio; he was back in action against Southampton as a late sub on Sunday. Zuma could be made available for Liverpool, but there's speculation that he himself hasn't had enough training, so he might not be ready until the Bournemouth game, which is next Monday. Now, I just mentioned him already. Although he was named on the bench against Southampton, Angelo Ogbonna didn't make didn't make an appearance in that game. We saw at the end of the game that Ogbonna came on to congratulate the rest of the team, and he was still limping. So this hamstring injury that he's picked up seems to be a little bit more serious, and he's unlikely to be available either for the game against Southampton. Sorry, the game against Liverpool on Wednesday night. So who else? Naifer Gerd, of course, he's still easing his way back to full training after picking up a long-term injury in pre-season. David Moyes was asked in the post-match press conference, the Southampton press conference, whether he thought any of the central defenders might be fit to play against Liverpool, and he replied, "No idea." But then again, this is what we expect from David Moyes, isn't it? He never gives anything away when it comes to injury issues. So the only one at the moment, as far as we know, central defensive wise, could be that Craig Dawson might be back for that game. The other player that's injured at the moment, of course, is Maxwell Cornet. He's been out for a couple of weeks after he picked up a knock in the game against Anderlecht the week before last in the away game. And again, he's back in training, but Liverpool game might come a bit too soon for him as well. What about our loans? Well, King Arthur, he's been doing all right in Turkey until the weekend. It was his 10th consecutive game for Besiktas at the weekend, where they played Trabzonspor in the 2-2 home draw against them. However, despite making a decent sort of start in Turkey, it was his error that led to Trabzonspor's second goal of the game, where Masuaku made a lazy pass across the face of his own goal just outside the box. It was intercepted and scored. There's speculation that Masuaku's loan spell could be made permanent in this January transfer window. But if he continues to make mistakes like that, well, maybe they won't make that permanent. Look, he's been doing all right, but that was a typical Masuaku mistake. But all is not lost. They could have won. They could have won that game, whereas they got a draw instead. Nikola Vlasic, well, he got off. If you remember a few weeks ago, there was an awful lot of talk about Vlasic and how we might want to call him back early from his loan spell at Torino because he's been doing so well. He had a golden spell, didn't he, where he scored 3 goals in 3 successive games. However, in the past 5 games, he's neither scored nor made an assist as well. He played the full 90 minutes at the weekend against Juventus, where Torino lost 1-0. There's also speculation that AC Milan are interested in the player and he might be made available for around £19 million. But as soon as that story came out, it was rubbish because the fee is still set at about £11 million if he's to leave on a permanent basis. And Torino have got first option to buy him. Who else was out on loan? Well, Nathan Trott. He's kind of done all right. He fought his way into second division Danish club Vejle BK, and it was his fourth start of the game, fourth start of the season at the weekend. But unfortunately, that only lasted 18 minutes, where a professional foul saw him get a straight red card. Vejle lost 3-0. It's a shame for Trot because he'd been doing quite well for that club. So after his red card ban, let's hope he gets back into that team. Emmanuel Longello, he started his fourth game in a row for Birmingham City at the weekend, where he helped keep a clean sheet and a 2-0 away win against Hull. The club are now 3 points off playoff places, and Longello seems to be making quite a mark for himself in that left back position for the rest of this season. And let's hope he does really well, because we know Aaron Creswell is in the last year of his contract. He'll probably get an extension, but many people speculate that we didn't really buy a replacement for Creswell. We've got Emerson, but Emerson is more a left wing back rather than a left back. And if Longello continues to do well, who's to say he won't come back to West Ham United to fight for that left back spot? Mipo Rebecco, he came on as a 70th minute sub for Port Vale against Forest Green at the weekend. And Vale were losing 2-0, but within 8 minutes of his substitution, he hit the ball just inside the 18-yard box after it landed to him from a set piece to start the fight back for Port Vale. Vale got their equaliser on the 88th minute to finish the game 2-2. That's Odebecco's second goal for the League One side, and it's good to see that he's making his mark there. Other players who were on loan. Dan Chesters was on loan, who's on loan for Colchester United. He came on as a 76-minute sub in the game against Swindon Town, but he couldn't help to overcome a 1-0 away defeat. And Thierry Nevers was a 69th-minute sub for League Two side Newport County in their 2-1 away defeat to Crawley Town. But again, he too couldn't turn his club's fortunes around. Nevers has made eight appearances so far this season, scoring 1 goal and assisting in 2. Right, why don't we get on and talk about the two games? And we're also going to talk about all this speculation that people. Heard a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff after the Southampton game where people are suggesting that we weren't good enough. We sort of give the game away. We dropped 2 points, etc., etc. But I'm going to go into that and then and leave you to sort of ponder and give me your views. As to what you think of how West Ham United are doing. So let's start with the game against Anderlecht last Thursday, with Antonio injured. With Antonio with his illness, and we thought that perhaps Skamaka would start, but David Moyes, you know what he's like. He had one eye on the game against Southampton, and he didn't want to risk playing Skamaka with Antonio being off sick as well. So we started with a false number 9. We had 3 up front with Benrahma, Paquetá, and Bowen, and it looked like Paquetá was the makeshift false number 9. Look, the game itself, I think we did really well. I think West Ham United. I read that apparently we played a formation of a 5-2-2-1. I don't know if that's true. For me, it looked like a 3-4-3. Where we had Benrahma, Paquetá, and Bowen up front. We had 3 at the back and then 4 in midfield. Look, I think we did really well. I think we kept Anderlecht at bay. I don't think we really had that much to worry about. Benrahma, what a great goal, a good free kick, something that I think the player himself needed. We know what Moyes is like with Benrahma. He's quite critical, but even Moyes gave him praise after the game, and it was a good goal for him to get. Look, Areola was called into action soon after to keep us 1-0 up. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the player updates, on 21 minutes, Oggy came off with Dawson coming on with an Oggy hamstring injury. Look, I think the game was done and dusted on 21 minutes or so on the half-hour mark. Sorry, where Jared Bowen took the ball off Emerson just inside the 18-yard box and struck a sweet left foot shot, unstoppable, superb goal by Bowen, and great build-up play for it as well. At half time, Paquetá was taken out of the firing line at 2-0. You'd expect the game is more or less done and dusted, I guess. And Paquetá was taken out of the firing line with Fornals taking his place. Again, Moyes thinking Paquetá, keep him fresh and fit for the game against Southampton on Sunday. Later on in the game, Rice and Skamaka came on for Cresswell and Bowen, and that was more, as Moyes said in the post-match interview, to sort of give them a bit of game time to keep them sort of momentum going as well for the next game that was coming up. Moyes is certainly shuffling the pack around, isn't he? He's making sure that everyone's getting game time. But with the injuries that we picked up to both Dawson and to Ogbonna, when Declan came on, he had to go on as a makeshift centre back. We kind of lose a little bit when that happens, because when you see a player like Declan going in as centre back, you kind of you know there's not gonna be as much drive in the centre of midfield as there would be with him on the pitch. Look, Dawson was subbed, like I said earlier, with a dead leg in the collision that he got with Downs. Downs was a superb. Again, he played a superb game. I think he was one of the highlights of the night. Again, he was absolutely fantastic in the way he controlled that game, his passing, his movement. He looked so composed for a young lad, and I'm sure he's going to eventually get his game time in the Premier League at some point. Bowen, got the goal that he got equals David Cross and Johnny Burns' European goal record of 6. So fantastic for him as well. But of course, I think the thing that we're all uh, did talk about at the end of the game was what happened with the Anderlecht fans. They started to set flares off. They started to rip up seats, throwing seats at our home fans, etc. And there's going to be an investigation going on by UEFA as to what happened. I really hope West Ham United don't get sort of impeded on this in any way, because it was the Anderlecht first of all, where was the security? How did Anderlecht fans manage to get the flares in through security in the first place? And it looked like the stewards were a little bit out of their depth when the Anderlecht fans started to rip up seats, etc. And there was a big police presence there with riot gear, and they came in to quell the what was going on. But there's going to be an awful lot of chat and speculation as to how that even got started in the first place. Several fans were hurt, several stewards were hurt, and apparently 4 police officers were hurt as well. Um, Now, let's move on to the weekend and let's move on to the game against Southampton. But first, let's start with the abuse that Vladimir Coufal got online. I think on a Twitter on his Twitter account, he put up a message, and all he seemed to get in return was a torrent of abuse from some so-called West Ham fans. Um, I find it really, really strange, to be quite honest with you. This time last season, we were lauding. I mean, this is a photo of Soufal where he was applauding the West Ham fans in the Eintracht Frankfurt game away. He was the last man standing on the pitch when he had, look at all the fans behind him, and all he cared about was to come and honour the away fans and applaud them, etc., and not a thought about what was going on behind him. He didn't give a damn. So he's gone from some people's perspective from being, a hero to a zero, which is really strange. I don't understand it. There was a stage last season where the 2 Czech players, Soufal and Souček, were lauded for their hard work, their passion, their determination. We all know that they don't have the footballing finesse of, say, the likes of Paquetá or Ben Rama and Bowen and all that sort of stuff. But what we do like about them, or what we have loved about them, is their hard work. Is the fact that they get stuck in. Is the fact that they try. They come on the pitch. They never stop trying. They never stop putting 100% effort into any of the games that they played. I just imagine what it had been like if the likes of Steve Lomas, who I I sort of look at as a similar player in terms of, hasn't got a lot of, didn't have a lot of flair in his time, but he had a lot of drive, a lot of determination. Billy Bonds is another one, etc. I just wonder what those sort of players would have would have got, what sort of response those sort of players would have got in the modern day with the modern day fans. I'm a bit. I feel a bit despondent by it. I think when you got players who play with guts, determination rather than skill, silky skills, etc., they are needed just as much as you got, the flair players as well. And let's not deny Coufal and Soucek are not to the level that they were at when we first got them at West Ham United. There's no denying that, and some people are suggesting that they're out of their depth. I looked at Coufal and I looked at the game he played. First of all, he's not a wing back, and if there's any criticism that you want to make, it's about David Moyes playing the players out, sort of out of position. But in a way, he had no choice. He could have switched them round. He could have switched Ben Johnson round with Coufal and put Ben Johnson as a bit of a wing back role, etc. But again, that's not really Ben Johnson's type of game either. So Coufal was put in a position where he tried his best. Okay, it wasn't coming off, but for fans to criticise him in the manner that they did on social media, I think leaves a lot to be desired. To be honest with you, and when you've got fans abusing players like that, let's not forget they get affected by it. Coufal took the tweet down, and then after he got praise from West Ham, ex-West Ham players, etc., he gave the thumbs up and all that. So let's not forget they are humans after all, and they do get affected by this too. But I think it's wrong. I think to criticise Coufal for his efforts, I think is really, really bad. It's not that the player goes out there and tries his worst. He tried his best. And I think there were okay. It broke down and broke down an awful lot when we were sort of out on the right, attacking right. But Coufal is not the sort of player that looks confident when he goes too far forward. He is a right back. He does his job well. When you ask him to play as a right back, he's a solid right back, and that is what we bought him for. When he's out as a wing back, the game changes for him, and it's not his fault that he was put in that role. Let's look at the lineup, shall we? Because the lineup itself, there were 5 changes made to the team that played against Anderlecht. Fabianski, Kehrer, Rice, Soucek, Skamaka were all came in place of Areola, Ogbonna, Downs, Lanzini, and Benrahma. Look, I haven't got a problem with the players. I mean, Fabianski, I still think Areola should be our number one keeper, but you can't deny that Fabianski certainly kept us in the game against Southampton at the weekend. He made a number of crucial saves, very good saves, which kept us in it. Kehrer, another one that was a little bit maligned by some of the West Ham fans. He played he played as a centre back. A lot of fans will say that he's better off as a right back. We've seen how good he is as a right back. But of the 5 centre backs that we've got, if you include Kehrer, he was the only fit one. And he had to have Johnson on one side and Creswell on the other. It was a makeshift centre back setup. With the other players that came on that were used, Rice, of course, Soucek back in his place. Again, a lot of people will speculate that, well, why, if Downs has had such a good game, then why not play him? But then, what if that went wrong for Downs? Moyes has put Downs in games that he knows Downs will build up his confidence against the likes of Anderlecht and Silkeborg and all those sorts of teams, and he will get good game time out of that. And when Moyes believes he's right to play in the Premier League, he'll use him accordingly. And Skamaka, of course. Skamaka came on as a late sub against Anderlecht, but he was a starter against Southampton at the weekend. The game itself, look, I think the game itself, the first 20 minutes, there's no denying it. The first 20 minutes, we were under the cosh. The first 20 minutes, Southampton came at us with our makeshift defence. We were in a bit of disarray. We didn't know what we were. It looked like we didn't know what we were doing, but we calmed it down. All right, we win a goal down, but let's not forget that goal. It was a bit of a weird goal, to be quite honest with you, because the goal itself, it came from where. What looked like a foul throw. When I used to play football in my day, you had to have both feet behind the touchline. That was the given, or at least your the toe be on the touchline at worst. You know, who was it that threw it? Whoever threw it, the Southampton player, he had almost his whole left foot over the touchline, and apparently it was okay because the heel touched the line. I don't remember that. The rule has changed, obviously, and I've missed out on that because that was rather strange. And that was the first thing. You know, was that a foul throw or not? And then the second thing was when Bowen got the ball, he was impeded by the ref. The ref got in his way, so he couldn't get to the player that scored. You know, and when the referee was told about that, he should have considered that, and he should have maybe pulled the goal back. Look, I won't deny Southampton. They were all over us in the first 20 minutes, and half away, they kind of they deserved that goal. To be quite honest with you, but it was still controversial. I think ref Peter Banks, if it had known what happened with Bowen, I think he would have pulled it back. But there you go. And thereafter, that was it for Southampton. They went a goal up, and that was it. From there on in, it was all us. You know, the final 25 minutes of the first half, the whole 45 minutes of the second half, we were in. We dominated that game, and it did take all right. It took a sublime goal from Declan Rice to get us back equal, but that was not. That was us pounding at the door, trying and trying and trying and people were saying that we were defensive, we were too defensive, etc. I think people maybe are talking about us being too defensive because Skamaka came off in the dying minutes and Antonio came on, and people are saying, well, why didn't Skamaka stay on as well as Antonio? Well, I think the reason why is pretty obvious. Wednesday night, we've got Liverpool on Wednesday night, and I think David Moyes, is trying to shuffle the pack accordingly. He's trying to make sure that players are getting game time, but at the same time, hoping that no one else gets injured. Can you imagine if Skamaka got injured or Antonio got injured, if both of them were on the pitch? And what then? And then we go into the game against Liverpool with only one striker rather than two. Look, our stats were good. 60% possession throughout the game against Southampton, 25 shots, 4 on target, 80% passing success rate. Southampton stats, 6 shots on target, of which I think 4 of those were in the first 20 minutes or so. So, are we struggling or are we clicking or are we beginning to click? You know me, glass is always half full rather than half empty for me. And I would say that it's the latter. I think we're beginning to click. Look, since our defeat against Everton in the Premier League, we've won 2 and drawn 1, scoring 6 goals and conceding just 2. The previous 3 games to that, where we lost 2 and drew 1, conceding 4 goals and scoring only 2, we've reversed it. We are moving forward. We have to be patient. I don't know what people kind of expect. It's funny when I read stuff and I listen to other channels, etc., and they talk about how negative we are, and I'm looking at it going negative. 25 shots, 60% possession away from home, 80% pass success rate, 4 shots on target, of which we scored, a goal from that. How negative is that? I mean, yes, there are times when we have been. I know against the likes of Brighton earlier in the season, the likes of Everton, you could say we weren't very good. The likes of Brighton, the likes of Man City, etc. But then I could also say, if you want to go back, we've been unlucky in some of the games. Let's go back to Forest. Let's go back to Chelsea, where we should have drawn that game 2-2, but for a controversial VAR decision. So I don't know. I think maybe early in the season, when Moyes didn't have all the players available to him, then yes, quite possibly you could argue that we were a little bit cautious. I don't think Moyes is being cautious now. I look at the way we play in Europe, and I think we're going out and hammering at the door against these teams that we're. And okay, we're playing lower level opposition. You still got to beat them though. Anderlecht, they got a goal back, didn't they, in the latter stages of the game last Thursday, and then they had another couple of shots where they could have drawn. So it wasn't an easy game. We weren't all over them. So what Moyes is trying to do is trying to get players to play enough games, but also picking the right teams. Moyes has said he'll continue to rotate, he'll continue to change. I know I said a few weeks ago, that Moyes seems to want two teams of 11. One specific team for European and Cup games and another team for the Premier League. What Moyes is now beginning to do is now beginning to mix those teams up. He's playing players players that you would expect to play in the Premier League, in European games, and vice versa. And I think Moyes is beginning to get it right. It has taken in time. People get frustrated with that, but he said it himself. It's going to take time for us to learn about the likes of Skamaka, for us to learn about Cornet, for us to learn about other players, Pakatar, etc., etc. But he's getting it right and he's moving forward. And the fact that we haven't lost in several games since the Everton game, we haven't lost a game since then, speaks volumes. And I think we are moving the right direction. I think we expect too much. I don't get the negativity. I watched the game. I was lucky enough to get a link to watch the game here in Cyprus at the weekend against Southampton, and I didn't see any negativity. Yes, I did see Southampton dominated the first 20 minutes of the game, and then after that we were the only team in it. We were the only team knocking on the door, trying to get a positive result. The goal by Declan in the, what was it, 64th minute or whatever it was, spurred us on. And I think Moyes bringing on the likes of Ben Rama, for example, bringing on Antonio, etc., seemed to suggest to me that he was trying to look at alternative ways of opening that door to get a second goal. So it's not negative from me. I think we've got to be patient. We continue to be patient. We're moving up the table slowly. We haven't lost any game. People are saying, "Oh, if we play against Liverpool the way we played against Southampton, we'll get thumped." Will we? I don't see that at all. I'm sorry. It's going to be a tough game. And yes, I think we will be defensive. And I think we do need a central defender, the likes of Dawson, to come back. We are desperate for that. I think that makeshift defence against Southampton wasn't great. But we had, a right back, a right back. One would argue that Tilo Kehrer is another right. So we effectively had three right backs playing at the back, and then we had a makeshift, and then two left backs, or a left wing back and a left back. We didn't have any central defenders, if you don't want to include Tilo Kehrer in that. So we do need someone like Dawson to get back in the game against Liverpool to make things a little bit stronger at the back. We need it, but to collapse and play negatively, I don't know. When you got the likes of Skamaka, Bowen, Benrahma coming on, etc. When you've got those sorts of players, either starting or coming on, Paquetá as well, Antonio, etc. When you've got them either starting or coming on as subs, that's not negative to me. I'm afraid. I think that's quite a positive move. Would I have liked to have seen Skamaka and Antonio on at the same time? I said it myself a few weeks ago. I don't think they're the same. They're very, very different players. I don't honestly think they'll complement each other. I talked about how certain players in the squad will complement Skamaka. Paquetá will, Bowen will, the likes of Fornals will, Benrahma will, and there are other players that will complement Antonio in his style of play. Bowen, etc., will do so. But I don't think Antonio and Skamaka will complement each other. I'm not so sure that mix will blend well. So no, I don't. I can understand why David Moyes pulled Skamaka off in the dying stages of the game. It was obvious. He wanted. He didn't want to get Skamaka injured. Antonio came on. Antonio should have kind of bullied. He should have done a bit more than what he did when he came on. And I think I understand it. We've got an important game on Wednesday night. He took Skamaka off to keep him, well, to make sure he didn't pick up an injury or anything like that. So for me, it is more of a positive than a negative, I'm afraid. I'm sorry to those people who expect me to say that West Ham are negative and rubbish and Moyes, should be, put on in a firing line and, etc. I can't say that. I'm seeing progress. Yes, it's progress slow. It's slow progress, but it's still progress. And I think it's going to be an interesting to see how we play against Liverpool. Yes, we're going to be a little bit more defensive minded, but I don't think we're just going to cave into them. Right, that's the show. Short, sweet. I'm really sorry I can't interact with you guys. I hope this is okay. I won't do many pre-recorded West Ham weeklies in the future, but I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope it's given you a bit of an insight as to what's happened over the past week and my thoughts as well. Tell me, leave your comments after the show. Tell me what you think. Do you think we're being negative, or do you think there's progress is being made? Much appreciated for watching. I'll be back soon, of course. So keep, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do so and hit the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.